seen those, Mr. Drake?
Yes, Judge, no objection.
All right, they'll be admitted without objection.
Just for the record, these are Miss Melissa's home phone records.
On her landline phone, right?
Landline phone.
Thank you.
For the clerk's benefit, we're going a little bit out of order because I already had another exhibit.
All right.
Done that I'm going to use later today.
Okay. Are you moving those into evidence at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
They're in, without objection. Very well. All right, anything further?
I'll submit the other version. I don't think they're going to argue them on what they're using them for. Case Exhibit 43 will be coming in by stipulation of the parties. This is another version of our home phone records. It shows different items than what Defense Exhibit E shows. So this would be a more complete, but still not fully complete.
Any objection to those coming in? Is this brand new? Just got it this morning?
No.
Everyone looked at it before.
Yes, Judge.
I just wanted to make sure that these were just
Is there any objection?
no objection.
They're in. Now, where are we? You wish to voir dire the witness further with respect to the telephone call and the timing thereof? Let's bring the witness in. All right, Mr. Warwick. Are there questions you'd like to ask? You may begin. Yes, you may.
Ms. Burke, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 43. By stipulation, this is Melissa Howard's phone bill.
Okay.
And I'm going to also show you Defense Exhibit E, which is in evidence, and by stipulation, this is a portion of Melissa Howard's phone records that month.
Okay.
I want to show you on skip forward to page 3 of 6 of the State Exhibit. That's the phone bill.
Is the home line?
This is the home phone number.
Okay.
The 682-0644. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And that's a good question. Show you the record up here. It also says, let's say up here on page 2 of Defense Exhibit E, it says 682. What you have is the phone number.
Yes.
On page 3 of 6 here, it talks about Sprint local services. Is that correct?
That's what it says, yes.
And just below that, on page 3 of 6, it says direct dial itemized calls. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
And out the side here, you see an amount for each one of these calls. It's 20 cents. Is that correct?
I see that, yes.
And remember back in the old days before people had cell phones and it was free to call everywhere?
I do.
Yeah, and when you called out, you had to pay long distance.
If it was a long distance call, yes.
Right. I'm sorry. If you call out long distance. Okay. And that record has lots of calls from Melissa Howard's house. They're all Fort Walton Beach phone numbers. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
And those phone calls were 20 cents each. Is that correct?
They are.
Okay. So those are outgoing long-distance phone calls from Melissa Howard's house to various Fort Walton numbers.
Did you say outgoing long distance?
That the fact that she's being charged means it's an outgoing long-distance call. Is that correct?
I mean, I don't agree with that because it doesn't say long distance. It says local.
But you don't pay for calls coming in, do
I don't know.
you? Back when you had...
Mr. Walker, we've got to make a point this morning.
I want to show you page 1 of 2 of Defense Exhibit E. And at the very top of that phone record, it says local incoming and outgoing call search for Melissa Howard's number, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
I'm going to show you this page. What phone number you called from? Your parents' phone
Or my in-laws,
Your in-laws.
one or the other.
in
Defuniak
Defuniak.
Springs.
What was your parents' phone number?
Probably 892-2935.
Okay. And what was your in-laws' phone number?
892-3418.
3418. I want you to look, and you can see that this phone record goes from January 1st all the way down to January 7th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that would cover 3 days before that Wednesday night phone call and 3 days after. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Both of those phone numbers that you said you would have called from would have had an 850-892 prefix, correct?
Yes.
Can you show me on that phone record that says it's the local incoming and outgoing calls? Can you show me on that phone record where the 850-892 phone call?
No, I don't see them. I've seen these records before, and I didn't see it then either.
So the 1st, January 1st, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, that entire 6-day period, your phone number from your in-laws nor your parents are on that phone record, correct?
I don't see it on here.
I've got no further questions.
All right. Questions?
No, Judge.
Any further evidence that either side intends to present on this issue?
No, Judge, this argument.
Go right ahead.
Judge, these two exhibits do not capture all of the incoming and outgoing calls of Melissa Howard. Its Exhibit E shows local incoming and outgoing calls. Testimony is that this phone call was from Defuniak Springs. Case Exhibit 43 shows the outgoing long-distance calls from Melissa Howard. And we can see where she's charged for phone calls. A phone call from Defuniak Springs to Melissa Howard would not be captured in either one of these exhibits. Ms. Howard would not have been charged for those phone calls.
Mr. Warren?
Your Honor, the phone records, they say what they say. And we've got a phone record. And I believe that there's a question here whether Ms. Burke, she may have had a phone call with Melissa Howard. There's a question here about whether she's remembering the date. Was it a week before? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm understanding what you're saying. And I'll give you a full opportunity to cross-examine her when the jury hears her testimony, which they're about to hear. Given the dates, given the contents of the telephone call as proffered to the court, given the time frame consistent with this testimony and other testimonies that's before the court, from a hearsay standpoint, the statement with respect to action or actions to take regarding the children is clearly not hearsay. It's not being offered for that. It is clearly admissible. It's a non-hearsay statement. The statement that Ms. Howard allegedly told Ms. Burke that David Russell Holbrook came to the house to intimidate, scare, or otherwise get her to take some action is being offered for the truth and is therefore hearsay, but given the totality of the circumstances, the time, which is a factor to be considered, the conversation, its contents, and the emotion testified to, gives this court every reason to believe the reliability of the information or the content of the phone call consistent with the evidence code, and it will be allowed as an excited utterance. Anything further?
There you go.
There be, yes.
Your Honor, we would still have an objection
Denied. Denied. Bring the jury in. Her testimony was given to the jury up until the content, which time a very timely objection was raised, which has led us to this hearing. All right?
Yes, sir.
Understand that in this presentation. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone have a seat, please. When we left last night, our witness was on the stand, and we were ready to take up with that testimony. At this time, go right ahead, Mr. Drake.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Ms. Burke.
Good morning.
Yesterday, during the course of your testimony, we were talking about a phone call that you had made to Melissa Howard. You've already described the state that she was in, so at this time, my questions are intended to focus on the content of that phone call, okay?
Okay.
So that night when you spoke with her, what did she tell you was the reason that she was so upset?
The first thing that she said to me was, I knew this would happen. And I asked her, what did she mean by that? And she said that Brian sent one of his men over to scare me. And I asked who it was because, I asked who it was, and she told me who it was.
How did she identify the person that had done this?
Well, right after she had answered the phone, she said he just left. And then she said, I knew he would do this. I had made an assumption that it was Brian. That's why I said, who was it? And she said that it was Russell.
Did you inquire who Russell was referring to?
I already knew who Russell was based on our prior conversations. However, I did ask her to specify exactly who she was talking about.
Did she?
She did.
And what did she say?
She used his full name. She said David Russell Holbrook. And my recollection is she said Junior as well.
Did she say what Russell told her during the course of the visit? I mean, why? How does that relate to what was going on in Melissa Howard's life?
That was the 4th of January. And beginning on January the 6th is when Taylor was supposed to start living with her on a primary basis. And she told me that what Russell told her was, you need to let that boy be with his father. And you need to let this go. So I took that to mean, of course, in 2 days, Taylor needed to stay with his dad as opposed to going to live with his mom.
How would you describe Ms. Howard's demeanor as the conversation continued?
She became more and more upset because she wanted her son to live with her, and she was scared. We'd had many conversations prior to this, many.
And there's one final thing I need to show you, Madam Clerk. What has already been admitted as state F. Question is, do you
I do.
who do you recognize that?
That is Melissa Howard.
Questions? All right. Of course. Counsel, let's approach. All right. Thank you. Go right ahead, Mr. Work, when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Scott Work again. I know you and I have talked a few outside the presence of the jury.
Yes.
And you've said you've met me before, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When I say talked here on the witness stand, is that correct?
Yes.
You said that Melissa Howard called Russell Holbrook by his whole full name, David Russell Holbrook, Jr. Is that correct?
That is my recollection, yes.
But she knows him as Russell.
Yes.
She knows him as Russell Holbrook, based on your previous conversations with her.
Yes.
You've testified that you knew that Taylor was with Melissa sometime on the 4th or the 5th, and that she was talking to you about that she felt like that she was saying Taylor needed to go back that Friday. Is that correct?
I don't think I testified that I knew if Taylor was with her on any specific day.
But you did testify that there was a discussion about whether or not Taylor needed to go back to his dad's that Friday, correct?
With me and Melissa? Are you talking about between me and Melissa?
Here's
Okay.
where I'm going. I can get there a different way. Okay. Let's assume that Melissa Howard had Taylor on Friday the 6th, right?
Okay, I don't know.
Let's assume that.
Okay.
Let's assume there's evidence that Taylor was at Melissa Howard's house. And I'm going to move on to something else.
Okay.
It's your testimony that Melissa Howard, I'm going to move on from that. I'm going to come up there and show you a couple of phone records that you've already looked at, okay?
Yes.
Sure. Sure.
Again, State's Exhibit 43, which is Melissa Howard's phone bill for that month. Is that correct? Right up here. 850-682-0644. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's Melissa Howard's phone number that you called her on. Is that correct?
It's her home number, yes.
Her home number. Okay. And just like we talked about before, I'm going to page 3 of 5. There are phone calls on this record. Is that correct?
Yes, all to Fort Walton Beach, it looks like.
Right. And we know that because each one of them had a 20-cent charge. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Right. And this was back in the day before cell phones existed, where you got free calls to just about anywhere in the world. Is that correct?
I don't know exactly when that switch was made.
But we see charges 20 cents each for outgoing calls, correct? 20 cents going all the way down for a total charge of $5.
Yes.
Yeah.
All to Fort Walton Beach.
All to Fort Walton Beach. Do you remember what your office number was back then?
850-651-6361
And where was your office located?
in Shalimar.
Okay. So that was also long distance from Crestview to Shalimar and Crestview to Fort Walton.
I don't know. I truly don't.
Sorry,
651
651?
6361.
Okay.
But those are all Fort Walton, so my
Right.
number's not there.
But your phone number doesn't show up on that charge log, is that correct?
Not on this one, no.
Right. Okay. Your office number.
Correct.
Now I'm going to show you Defense Exhibit E. And it is, you go to page 1 or 2, and up at the top it says local incoming and outgoing call surge for Melissa Howard's phone number, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
And that was Melissa Howard's home phone number.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see anywhere on that record, I'm showing you a record that goes from January 1st all the way to January 7th, where she was getting, and there were phone calls going, from her phone even after she was deceased, correct?
I guess so, yes.
Right. And under elapsed time for the phone calls on the 7th, after she was deceased, they're like 46 seconds, 13 seconds, 0, 0, and 2 seconds. Is that correct?
For just those particular ones?
Right, I'm just talking about the ones
Yes,
on the 7th.
that's what it looks like.
So those are, we don't know what they are, but very, very short.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to, we've got their records of phone calls, the local incoming and outgoing calls from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Do you see back up here. You made a phone call from either your parents or your in-laws, correct?
Yes, a landline.
Right.
Yes.
Landline. Okay. Do you see either one of their phone numbers on that record for the 1st through the 7th?
I don't see any Defuniak Spring numbers at all on here. I don't see any 892 prefixes, period.
Right. Ms. Burke, earlier you testified that during this family law process that you had to have security walk you out of the courtroom. Is that correct?
I felt more comfortable with that happening, yes.
You did something you'd really never done before.
Not ever, but extremely rare.
That's fair. That wasn't because of that wasn't because of Russell Holbrook, was it? Or let me ask you.
No, well,
It was because you were scared of Brian Howard.
absolutely, and the people he hung out with. I mean, he had people at court with him sometimes.
Was it ever David Russell Holbrook?
I
Was it
could
ever
not.
Russell Holbrook?
I don't know the answer to that.
And was she at court with you when you would go to court at those times?
I believe she was there every time, yes.
And so if Russell would have been scratch that question. Okay. Do you recall in January 6, 2006, that you met with Robbie Hughes and John Cook? They were investigators in this case?
On what day?
January 6, 2006.
Probably. Sir, I met with investigators as recent as a year and a half ago, I believe.
If I were to show you the report written by Robbie Hughes, would that refresh your memory?
Perhaps.
Your Honor, if I could approach.
Very well.
Read that quietly.
Okay.
Does that refresh your memory that you met with Robbie Hughes and John Cook that day?
I remember meeting with them, yes.
And nowhere during that interview did you mention anything about Russell Holbrook. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't say it in here, but this doesn't say.
Do you wish to retrieve that which was used to refresh your memory? No, you're fine.
There are many things that are not mentioned in there that I said. That's very short. They met with me for a long period of time.
And you met with Special Agents Dennis Haley and Megan Plumbo on November 4th, 2016. Does that sound right?
It sounds right.
If I were to show you the report that was prepared by Dennis Haley, would that help refresh your memory?
Of the meeting,
Oh, I'm sorry. And it was in that conversation that you relayed this stuff about Russell Holbrook in the conversation, alleged conversation between Russell and Melissa Howard. Is that correct?
I relayed that to every investigator I spoke to about Melissa Howard's death.
Let me ask you this. When you said that you received a phone call on the 3rd.
My office did.
I'm sorry, your office.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Your office got a phone call from Melissa on the 3rd, correct?
Yes.
It's possible that Melissa called from her cell phone, correct?
I don't know that.
But it's possible.
Oh, it's possible, yes.
And I didn't show you a record of Melissa's cell phone. Is that correct?
I don't believe you did.
So she could have called from her cell phone, and we don't have that record.
I've seen the record of the phone call,
Okay. So
but it wasn't in those that you showed me.
So there is a record from Melissa Howard's cell phone that you've seen where Melissa Howard did call your office on the 3rd.
Well, let me change that. I don't know if it was her cell phone, her work number, her home, or someone else's number.
It wasn't the home number that I showed you.
I don't think so.
I just didn't want to act like I realized I asked a question that might have, and I don't want to act like I'm misrepresenting something. Mm-hmm. There was a phone call on the 3rd, and it came from some phone number from Melissa Howard to your office. Is that correct?
Yes.
I've got no further questions.
No further questions. Take a moment, gentlemen.
No further questions, Your Honor.
I'd like to remove into evidence State's Exhibit 42 by stipulation.
Stipulation will be admitted. Very well. 42's in by stipulation. Thank you.
And could I have the other phone records we've been discussing? Are they with the clerk currently? And we've been talking a lot about phone records, so if you'll bear with me as we talk about them just a few more minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to start with Defense Exhibit E. On the page with is there a notation in the upper left-hand corner of that document?
There is.
What does it say?
The number or the,
The
where's, okay, local incoming, outgoing call search?
first word?
Local,
Where were you calling from?
Defuniak Springs.
You testified earlier there were no 892 numbers on that paper. What do you mean by 892 interchange?
There's no 892 numbers on here.
What are 892 numbers?
Well, Defuniak Springs. And I know that Melissa had friends in Defuniak Springs.
Now, on State's Exhibit 43, what cities are reflected in those photos?
This is the one that's just simply Fort Walton Beach, every single phone call.
Do those show incoming or outgoing phone calls to Fort Walton Beach?
It says direct dial, itemized calls. So that, I guess that would be her calling out.
And you testified to, in response to the defense question, that your office number at the time was 651-6361. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 42. I'm not sure which page of the exhibit it is, but the base stamp number is 7699.
My office number is listed on the 3rd.
Is that the 651-6361 number?
Yes.
How long was that call?
2 minutes.
All right. I believe that'll do it. Thank you, Judge.
Witness speaks. Did you have something further, gentlemen? Did this witness be excused? Counsel approach. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some things that we need to take up that'll take a little time, so we'll be in recess. My intention is for you to be brought back in with us at 11 o'clock, so that is around 15 minutes. All right? All right, everyone can be seated. Or is there some matters we can take up at this time before we call our next witness?
Judge, the state's ready. The defense has requested a chance to review the redactions.
That's fair. I'll give you that opportunity. We'll be in recess. Can you do that right in here? All right. If there's a problem, I'll be in chambers. All right, gentlemen?
Yes, Judge.
We'll be in recess for 15 minutes time.
All rise, please.